a few minutes later, there it comes down Main Street. I thought my vehicle was going to get run over.
Westbound into the downtown area, right there, may have taken out a radiator. He doesn't stop for light poles. He doesn't stop for buildings. He takes out the corner of the copycat.
Have you seen this news footage before? Maybe you haven't. Maybe this is the first time you have, or maybe you've seen plenty of the other stories on YouTube covering Marvin Heemeyer and the Killdozer rampage back in 2004 in Granby, Colorado. What could I possibly have new to bring to this story? Well, since I live in Denver, I personally went and visited Granby, Colorado to see if I could find somebody that had some untold stories. I luckily ran into this nice police officer who had plenty of time to spare, sharing some of his stories with me. But before I get to his story, let me give you some history over what actually happened back in 2004.
May have taken out a radiator. He doesn't stop for light poles. He doesn't stop for buildings. He takes out the corner of the copycat store. Again, this is right in downtown Granby.
Born on October 28, 1951, Marvin Heemeyer was just a regular dairy farmer kid in South Dakota. It wasn't until 52 years later that he would have done something that nobody could have seen coming. In 1989, he moved to Grand Lake, Colorado, about 16 miles away from Granby. His friends stated that he had no relatives in the Granby Lake area and were unsure why he moved out there. Friends of Marvin said that he was overall a likable person. Heemeyer's brother Ken even stated that he would bend over backwards for anyone. However, while many people described Heemeyer as an affable person, local resident Christy Baker claimed that her husband was threatened by Heemeyer after refusing to pay for a disputed muffler repair. Baker said her husband later paid Heemeyer $124. Fast forward a few years, in 1992, Heemeyer purchased 2 acres of land from the Resolution Trust Corporation for $42,000. There, he planned to build his muffler shop and start his business in Granby, Colorado. Alright, now that we're caught up in Granby, Colorado, we can talk about the 2 things that set Marvin off. Those 2 things being blockage of the road and blockage of his sewer pipes. First, for the construction plant, Marvin tried to argue that the construction process would block access to his muffler shop, thus cutting off his income. According to court documents, the construction process for the concrete plant wouldn't even come close to blocking his route. Secondly, the blockage of his sewer pipes. So it turns out when Marvin bought this property, all of the sewer solutions was being held in an underground concrete container. Now there's nothing wrong about that as long as you drain it properly, which Marvin, being the biggest brainless guy I know, he did not. Marvin was hit with a fine from Granby, Colorado, and was forced to fix the sewer himself, which would cost him approximately $70,000. Marvin took these problems like a champ and handled it like any sane person I know would. He heavily modified a Komatsu bulldozer, fitted it with metal armor, and security cameras protected by 3-inch bulletproof glass, 3 rifles, and no way to get out. Marvin might have had just a little bit of anger issues, but I guess I get it. So now with his heavily modified bulldozer, he took to the main streets of Granby, Colorado to wreak as much havoc as he could against those who had wronged him. That being the newspaper company, the town hall, Gamble's hardware store, and numerous other properties inside of Granby. Let's get to the interview of the police officer that happened to be there on that day. Thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate it. Hello. I have found a very police officer to help me do some interview questions about the Killdozer. I'm here with Officer
Roy Ibarra?
Roy Ibarra. All right. Roy, what do you have to say about the day the Killdozer came into town?
Yes, it was my second year in law enforcement, and at the time the town departments didn't exist. It was the sheriff's office that covered even the towns. They were contracted out. I knew a little bit of the situation, that he was upset with some of the rulings that the town was doing, and he became upset with that. The day it happened, I was actually in the working out at the inn at Silver Creek, and I had a friend come tell me, hey, somebody's shooting up the town, and I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. And but then she's like, Roy, it's all over the radio, somebody's shooting up the town. So I was like, well, my home was clear over in Tabernash, so I just drove in my personal car into town, and drove up to one of the deputies on Main Street on Agate, and he was directing traffic out, and he kind of starts telling me what's going on, and he goes, as you can hear, he's shooting, and you can hear in the background just.
Okay, so he was shooting his guns on town? I thought he was just. I know he had 2 rifles inside the Killdozer, behind the metal plates. There was no casualty, those, right? No casualty.
Not, but it was close.
It was close?
It was very close. I think he had 3 mounted rifles inside. The deputy he was in front of the newspaper on Agate directing traffic. I told him, since I was just in sweats and t-shirt, that, hey, why don't you go in? I'll do traffic here. Just give me a traffic jacket and a gun. So I took his shotgun, and that's what we kind of carried at the time. And I had no idea. A few minutes later, there it comes down Main Street. I thought my vehicle was going to get run over. And then he turned into the newspaper. He had these little double plated bulletproof glass ports that we didn't know they were bulletproof. So we were trying to shoot into those to ricochet because deputies had already said that they had been shot at. They had to hide behind like concrete or metal. I can't remember exactly what they were saying. But, it was surreal. At the time, myself was not scared. You're just trying to stop him so he doesn't hurt anybody.
Yeah.
And not knowing the details, it was just stop that. However, and we just didn't have the equipment or anything like that.
Is there anything that's even come close to that day in Granby since, or?
No, not that I can think of. I mean, in law enforcement, you see a lot of things that I never expected to see.
I'm sure.
At all. So just luckily nobody got hurt. I know he had his grievances. Me personally, I think we should have handled it differently.
I think a lot of people would agree with you on that, to handle it a bit differently.
But lucky, like I said, nobody got hurt. He was shooting at the big tanks down. I don't know if you saw him coming into Granby over the bridge. There's big old natural gas tanks.
Yep.
He made it over there. Did start shooting. It was a long day, and then finally he came back downtown. Ran in through the Gamble store and then dropped into the basement. And that's where he got stuck.
That Gamble store, I tried to find on the map today. That's farther that way, correct?
Actually, it's back here on Agate.
Okay, it's on.
It's a little bit hard to see, but it's
okay.
there. Yeah.
Cool. I was trying to find it on Google, and it kept on taking me to some hardware out there. Do you want to give us any more key details about that day? I know you're talking about how you were in your everyday clothes driving to the town directing traffic. Do you have any stories from police officer friends that were on the ground or involved?
Well, at the time, it was Glenn Trainer. He was the undersheriff. He actually jumped on top of the bulldozer, which he had put grease on.
Oh, he
so nobody
greased
could get
it.
on. Yeah, but he was still able to get. His goal was to put some rounds into the exhaust to somehow try to get something to happen to stop it. He eventually got off. A couple of, I think, a few town cars, maybe even squad cars, got run over. When he was shooting towards those tanks, his back, I don't know what you want to call it, he didn't calculate that it was going to be in the way, and he was just kind of ricocheting off his own equipment.
Gotcha.
But that's what he was trying to shoot at with his .50 caliber that he had in there. Some of the other officers, I found out later that some deputies ran to the incident and some went away.
I think it'd be kind of hard for me to run towards that, but you can see that's why I'm not an officer. I know that they said the Killdozer, once the rampage was done and was falling through and everything had passed, once they got it out of Gamble's basement, is it true they just, I know they they separated the parts to bury them. Is that true? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know what they did with the parts. I know they chopped the bulldozer up to just be done with it and get rid of it. So basically no reminders of a really bad day. I know the governor at the time actually came in on a helicopter later that night after it had kind of ended to view what had happened. He was, I think he was after Roy Romer. He was a Democrat, but I can't think of his name right now. But he dropped in right at the old hospital that was right in town by 7-Eleven, and came in and viewed what had happened. So.
Do you get a lot of people like me coming up and talking about it, or is it?
There's definitely quite a few people that do ask about it. I mean, it was international news. The one thing that it didn't get out a lot at the time because Ronald Reagan had died right then too, and so that got a lot of coverage. But people saw it all over the world. I mean, it was such a crazy thing to happen. Each year, don't hold me to this, but I think we do get these calls, and it's right around. Sometimes it's not the date of, but right around the date of the incident, we do get calls from people like kind of sovereign citizens and or friends of, that they leave messages. Some not very good, some are just inquiring. I mean, most of us weren't there at this point anymore. I'm one of the very, very few. I think maybe there's 2 of us, 3 of us that were involved in the county still. But it is definitely a lot of people ask about it. Of course, you know, if I was going somewhere, something like this happened, I would ask about it, look for material about it, and because what a not in a good way, but what a unique incident to have happen.
Very unique, yeah.
You know.
All right, yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell people that are interested in the Killdozer?
Really don't.
Really don't.
I hope nothing
Stop
like
coming.
that ever happens like that again. It's probably the one thing I would say.
Well, we'll leave it on that note. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And just like that, we made it to the end of the video. I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Maybe you learned something. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. And if you enjoyed this content, I got another video right here maybe you might like. It's about ChatGPT and jailbreaking it. It's kind of interesting, maybe. I don't know. Have to find out. You got to click it. I just can't tell you. Okay, bye-bye.